Hello. Um, Good evening, everyone. I'm gonna set up here and give you guys a few minutes to log on. Um, I am actually sitting in my office right now, waiting on my husband and my son to finish up at the barber shop so we can go out and have dinner. Um, it's my birthday today, y'all. Happy birthday to me. And the plan for tonight is just basically to have a family dinner at a really nice restaurant. So I'm kind of excited about that. So while I'm waiting on them, I decided to give you all a birthday present from me. And so let's see how we can work through this practice question. I just want to give you a few more minutes to kind of log on. And we'll see where we can go from here. Okay. See if I can invite a few people if they're available. Hopefully we can get some folks on here and then we can get started. For those of you who are logging on, if you can hear me, just let me know you can hear me just by saying hello. That would be extremely helpful. What a way to celebrate birthday, right? But okay. So I'm just going ahead and trying to invite a few people that I may see on my friend list. So there. All right. This is a really yummy question. I like this question. So want to see how we can work through this together. Hopefully we can get some good, get a good dialogue going on. All right, I think that's it as far as me being able to invite folks. I can't see anyone else who I can invite. All right, so if you are joining me, if you're here, and you want me to know that you can hear me, because I know you can't see me, because I have my screen up and I'm sharing my screen so we can go over this practice question together. But if you can hear me, just let me know you can hear me by writing in the comment section. What I don't want to do is keep moving forward and talking and no one can hear me. I see some people popping on and popping off, popping on and popping off, and I know how that can be sometimes. But before I get started, I want to make sure that you guys can hear me and that you're here with me. So just let me know. That will be extremely helpful. And then that way, okay, great. Thank you, Jen. Thank you for letting me know that you can hear me. Okay. So I'll go ahead and get started. One is better than none, right? And I do see that there are a few people here, but I'm gonna go ahead and get started anyway. All right, so what do we have here? We got a really good, yummy question. So let's see what this question is saying, or this vignette is saying. So basically, what I'm about to do here is kind of go through a practice question. I want to read it to you, read the answer choices, and then just show you one way that you can, kind of process through this question to kind of help you derive at the best answer. Notice I'm using the word the best answer as opposed to the correct answer. One thing that I like to teach my students that is really important, that we don't get focused on trying to find the correct answer or the right answer. Because a lot of times with these vignettes, what you'll see is that you may have more than one choice that could be a right answer. However, as we're looking at the way the question is designed and what it's asking from us and what it is that we need to do, we need to pay really close attention. And therefore, we want to make sure that the answer choice we come up with is the best answer that's addressing the question and dealing with the problem that the vignette has presented to us. Now, the ASWB told us that there are 3 types of questions that will be asked on the exam. Really 2, but 3 types of questions. And those 3 types of questions are recall, analytical, and reasoning, right? And for those of us who like to use acronyms, or, you know, who tend to remember things better, you know, that way, the ASWB, you know, they use the RAR acronym to signify recall, analytical, and reasoning. So these are the types of questions that you will come across, right? And so we know recall questions are those questions that pretty much assess your knowledge, what you know. Okay, so there's nothing more to that. Either you know the information or you don't. And it's assessing your knowledge of the content area, okay? And that content area is all that information that has been given to you, outlined for you in what we call the clinical KSAs, right? And so I recommend that everyone, you know, if you don't have a copy of the KSAs, I recommend that you go to the ASWB website. And that website is real simple, aswb.org, and get yourself a copy of the KSAs for the level of exam that you're taking. I hear a lot of people asking all the time, is this going to be on the exam? Is that going to be on the exam? Should I study medication, or should I study supervision? You know, or my exam didn't have this, or my exam didn't have that. Word to the wise, if the ASWB have given you a list, an outline of all the content area that you need to focus on and be aware of, word to the wise, study it, know it, make it a part of you. You don't know for sure which area or which content area will be, you'll be tested on. Everybody gets, you know, a very different version of the exam. There's, I believe, 4 different versions of the exam, and with those 4 different versions, they're shuffled. So the questions are shuffled, and there's a variation of questions that you could get. So I would just, you know, encourage you to make sure that you pay attention to the KSAs, you study all content area, and that you don't really get yourself wrapped up on if I should study this more, if I should study that more, but you want to be familiar with everything. Now, I'm using the word familiar, right? Because we cannot study all that stuff and commit it to memory. It's just almost impossible. And some of us are really trying to study and memorize this information. And what tends to happen when you do that, you get so overwhelmed with detail that when it comes time to taking the exam and you're sitting in front of that computer, you just draw a blank. Everything that you study and you memorize, it just goes out of your head. So again, I could encourage you not to study to memorize, right? But what we want to do, we want to study to internalize. And, you know, I break this down to, you know, my students, and I really delve into what I mean by internalize, okay? There's a big difference between memorizing information and internalizing information. And that's something that I would encourage you to do. Make sure you internalize this, so that way when you see something, you connection, all right? So there's the opening. We got recall, analytical, and reasoning type questions. We don't study to memorize, but we study to internalize, and it's extremely important for you to know every content area. Now, this one question that I have posted here. It is so yummy, and it is full of information. It's full of details, okay? And the only way you'll be able to see all that this question encompasses is if you know your material, right? And so let me just show you, all right? Let's read the question. During an initial assessment, a client with depression states that she sometimes wishes she could just go to sleep and never wakes up. She states that she has felt this way off and on for several months. What is the best way for the social worker to follow up? A, have you had any close friends or family who committed suicide? B, why do you want to die? C, how would your family feel if you killed yourself? And D, is your family aware that you feel this way? Well, I know as I was talking, I bet a bunch of you were already reading the question and trying to figure it out, and probably already came up with your answer. And if so, that's fine. That's okay. Okay. So what I really want to encourage you to do, instead of just, you know, because we fall into the habit of kind of like reading the question and then rushing to answer the question. I mean, to find the answer to the question, as opposed to like really reading the question and seeing what we have in front of us, okay? And so what I want to encourage you is to try to back up, And let's do this again, right? We want to read it slowly. We want to pay attention to the keywords that are, stated in this vignette. We want to identify what's actually going on here and see if we can really figure out the problem that we should be addressing or solving, okay? So let's read this again. During an initial assessment, a client with depression states that she sometimes wishes she could go to sleep and never wake up. She states that she's felt this way off and on for several months. What is the best way for the social worker to follow up? A, have you had any close friends or family who have committed suicide? B, why do you want to die? C, how would your family feel if you killed yourself? D, is your family aware that you feel this way? Now I want to ask you guys a couple of questions. I want to try to get you involved. If you can, type in the comment section what you think is going on here. What area is this assessing? What do you think is happening here? If you guys can engage me a little bit. If you're still there, type in the comment section. What do you think is going on here? Okay. So I want to give you guys a little bit of time to kind of engage. I think we learn best when we're able to dialogue and share, talk back and forth. So I mean, I can talk you through this, but if I get some feedback from you guys, I could get a better idea, a better understanding of how you're processing and how you're assessing, information. Anybody that's bold enough to write in the comment section, what do you think is going on here? What did you read? What are you understanding to be taking place? Okay. All right, Diana, thank you for answering. Diana said depression. Okay, anybody else? Anything else? What do we see is going on here? So during the initial assessment, a client with depression states that she sometimes wishes she could go to sleep and never wake up. She states that she's felt this way off and on for several months. What is the best way for the social worker to follow up? And you know what? I'm gonna go with what Diana said. I'm gonna go with quite possibly some depression, right? So this client is feeling depressed, right? So she's coming in, she's talking to the therapist, and she's letting her know how she's feeling. She's assessing, she's sharing some things. What we do know, based on this information that's given, yes, Joanne, thank you, is that this is an initial phase of treatment. And so that's a key word here that we need to pay attention to, right? So Joanne said it's the initial phase of treatment, so they probably want to see what's the best option, considering the phase. All right, well, yeah, it is the initial phase of treatment, but instead of saying I'm considering the phase, and if I'm understanding you correctly, I'm thinking you're saying considering the phase so that we know what type of intervention we should be doing. This is the beginning phase of treatment. This is the initial phase. So with that being said, we do know that this is not an established client, that the therapist doesn't really know the client, so we can safely draw the inference that she's gathering information, she's collecting data, she's trying to figure out actually what's going on. So we do know that we do have a client who has some depression, right? So she's just coming in for the first time. She's sharing with the therapist what's going on, and she's noting that, she does have some depression. She's sharing that she's been feeling depressed, and sometimes she wishes she can go to sleep and never wake up. She didn't say, anything too extravagant. However, she did note that sometimes she wished she could go to sleep and never wake up, right? She stated that she's felt this way for how long? We got some duration here. On and off for several months, right? So we got some keys going on here. We got some keywords going on here. So duration, she's been feeling this way on and off for some time. She just sometimes wished that she could go to sleep and never wake up. And what's being asked here is what's the best way for the social work to follow up? Now, if we look closely, if we look at the answer choices that we're given, notice the quotation marks, right? So basically, what this question is wanting us to do is be able to give the best response, the follow-up response. So the intervention, the technique, the skill that we're using here is following up through, a verbal response. What is the best response here? How should the social worker respond? Well, in order for us to actually understand how we should respond, we got to understand what's going on here. And in the initial phase of treatment, when a client is first coming in and you're gathering information, what are some key factors? What are some key things that we have to do? Now, because she dropped some key words such as depression, wanting to, go to sleep and not wake up. What do you think we got going on here? What kind of a situation do you think we got going on? What kind of inference can we draw based on the information that we have? All right. So let me say that again. What kind of situation do you think we got going on here? Okay. Some people said asking for help. She may have a history of ideation. Ideation meaning what, Sabrina? I don't want to assume for you, but that word ideation, I'm thinking that you're meaning she might have a history of suicidal ideation, right? Let me get on the laptop. Can't type as fast. That's fine. Yeah. So what kind of situation might we have going on here? And in my opinion, I believe that we have a situation here where she might be having some depression. She might be having some thoughts, but we don't know. So listen here, because this is the beginning phase of treatment, what skill do we need to apply, right? We need to do some screening, right? Screening for what? Possible suicide behavior, right? Possible suicide behavior. Now, we don't want to make any assumptions. We don't want to jump too quick. We don't want to, pretty much put thoughts in her head. So if we're screening, right, that's a skill. That's something that we do in the beginning phase of treatment. We assess and we screen for certain things, and we're screening for possible suicide. We want to kind of rule out what's the best way for the social work to follow up with this. A, have you had any close friends or family who committed suicide? B, why do you want to die? C, how would your family feel if you killed yourself? D, is your family aware that you felt this way? Now, given we are screening, okay? Remember, we are screening for possible suicide. What would be the best follow-up that the social worker should do? Everybody, if you're ready, put your answer in the comment section. All right, let's see what we got going on here. So mind you, we have a young girl, right, who's coming into therapy for the first time, or a client, not necessarily a young girl, a client with depression, right? So who's the person that we're treating? We're treating the client with depression. What's the issue? The issue here is that sometimes, she wished she could go to sleep. And never wake up, right? We know that this is an initial phase of treatment. And so with that initial phase of treatment, we're doing some screening. The skill that we're using, we're doing some screening. And when we're screening for possible suicide. And so what we know about suicide and what the literature has taught us about suicide, what we've come to know about suicide is that there are some key things that we need to pay attention to. That didn't, we know that because we've read the literature, we've done a lot of work around this. We've also done assessments ourselves and done screening ourselves. So when we see those key words, because that information has been internalized, when we see key words that jump out at us, it should be able to help us with being able to zero down what should be more or less the correct answer, right? So let's start with A. Have you had any close friends or family who committed suicide? What have the literature told us about this here particular statement? We know that when folks have experienced suicide in their family, either by a relative or a close friend, that the likelihood of that individual committing suicide increases, right? And so A for me is a likely answer. It's a likely way to screen, keyword here, to screen for what's actually going on. All right. What about B? Why do you want to die? Well, B wouldn't be a good answer. And the reason why B wouldn't be a good answer is too blunt, right? Nowhere in this vignette does she say she want to die. Okay, so we don't want to just assume a situation and just put death on her. She did say sometimes she wish she could go to sleep and never wake up, but she did not say that she wants to die. So let's be careful of doing that, and let's be careful of asking our clients a question, in that vernacular. How about C? How would your family feel if you killed yourself? Same situation here. She didn't say anything about wanting to kill herself. And, suggesting that to her in the same vein is a little bit over the top. And so I would rule out C for being the answer and saying, no, this is not a likely choice. And then D, is your family aware that you feel this way? Well, D is it, D makes sense. Is your family aware that you feel this way? Yeah, but how does that address the issue or the problem that we're trying to get at? How does that, deal with the situation that we're trying to figure out what's going on? We're trying to find out what's actually going on with this client and where she really is. And so that assessment, that screening, that initial assessment, that initial screening that we're doing is going to lead us to help us understand if she's suicidal or not, and if we need to do further work, later on down the line. So out of the 4 answer choices here, the best answer choice for this particular vignette is A. Have you had any close friends or family who have committed suicide? And what this is doing is pretty much screening and assessing for, the possibility of maybe she's feeling, she's having some thoughts, or we just kind of want to start ruling out what's going on and try to get to the root of probably what's going on with her. We don't just want to assume suicide. We don't want to assume that she want to kill herself. We don't want to ask these blunt questions. We don't want to put any kind of bad thoughts in her head, but we really want to just be able to get at the root of what's going on and screen. And what led me to believing and understanding that this question was assessing screening is that keyword here, initial assessment. This makes it so hard when you I'm trying to engage with you guys, but I can't hear you guys, and you guys can't talk to me back. So I wish I could hear you, and I wish you guys can kind of speak to me or type to me in real time, so that way I can answer questions as quickly as needed. All right, so I'm gonna go over here to this comment section and see what we got here. Brianna says suicidal, crisis. You want to be able to validate the feeling and build rapport, but there's no option that captures that option. So the next option would be assess, right? All right, so Joanne, here's what I want to caution you from doing, okay? So one of the reasons why we get ourselves in trouble is because we start pulling in a whole lot of stuff that's not even there. So basically what we only want to do, we kind of want to focus on only what's here. So based on what's given here, it's just four selections, 4 options. And so based on the 4 options, what's the best answer choice? The best answer choice is to go through the screening process. We know we need to screen because we know this is an initial phase of treatment. That initial phase of treatment tells us what technique, what skill, what type of intervention we need to use. The intervention we need to use is an assessment. A type of assessment is screening. Have you had any close friends or family is a tool, is a technique, is a skill, is a verbiage that we use to screen for suicidal ideation, suicidal attempts, suicidal thoughts. There's more question, of course, that goes along with that. But because we don't have the whole screening form in front of us, this is one of those questions that you would want to ask to get at what's going on. So this type of question right here is considered a recall type question. And why is it a recall type question? It's a recall type question basically because what it's doing is assessing your understanding, your knowledge, what you know about suicidal ideation, suicidal assessments. What do you know about suicide? So it's all in that family of suicide. How do you do a screening? What's the best way to interview, to ask the appropriate questions, to get at what is going on with the individual internally? So that's what make this a recall type question. Either you know it or you don't. Either you understand the type of questions that you want to ask or you don't. And so that comes with studying and understanding and knowing how to assess for suicide. Any questions on that? Do anybody have any kind of questions or any kind of feedback? Any questions? Anybody have any questions? So what we want to keep in mind, right? When the literature has told us, right? The literature has taught us that a family history of suicide can actually increase a person's risk factor for wanting to commit suicide. While this doesn't particularly talk about her wanting to commit suicide, like I said before, asking those questions and assessing for suicidal ideation is an important part of what we do. So we have to be empathetic in terms of how we're talking to her. I saw somebody in there in the comment section that said, acknowledge her feelings. And one way that you acknowledge her feelings is by being empathetic in your response, how you respond back to her. So you want to be empathetic in how you respond. You want to be careful in pretty much how you respond to her, how you address the questions, and just kind of just don't be dismissive of her feeling, but pretty much try to stay focused on, what it is that she's saying, and try to get at, what's really going on here. And the only thing I can keep, going back and forth to saying is really assessing for suicide. Okay, I'm tripping over my own words right now, trying to do too many things. I don't really know how to do the screen share. But why not D first? I narrowed it down to two answers, A and D. Why not start with D? Well, Francesca already explained that. Is your family aware that you feel this way? Her family being aware that she feels this way, what does that have to do with us really trying to screen for? First, we want to screen for, what's going on and make sure that she's not suicidal. All right, so we want to rule out. So we have a safety situation here that we need to that we need to be considerate of, and we need to think about. It's unspoken, however, it is a safety issue. And so we want to make sure that she's not, in harm's way, at risk of hurting herself or anything like that. And what you do, you have to screen and rule out suicidal ideation, suicidal behavior, suicidal attempt first. And so asking about the family and them knowing about how she feels is not really relevant when it comes to really just being able to assure her safety and asserting that she's okay. Did that answer your question? I hope so. So this is really about safety, assessing her safety, assessing that she's not suicidal, assessing that she's not going to hurt herself. And that's what we want to do first. We want to assess for safety first. We want to do a screening. We want to get that out of the way. How do we know that we're assessing for safety and assessing for, we need to screen for that because of some of the things that she said to us. And some of the key words here is that she's feeling depressed and that she wishes she could go to sleep and never wake up. Those are red flag words. They are words that you want to be cognizant of, and they are words that you want to respond to. You want to respond empathetically to that, and you want to make sure that you address that before you do anything else. And so we want to rule out some things. All right. Well, I know y'all kept hearing the chimes. So that chime is telling me, my husband is telling me that he is on his way. So I am about to pack up here and run out and go get my birthday dinner. It's my birthday, y'all. I just turned a year older today. So I'm celebrating tonight with my family by having dinner. The other way that I decided to celebrate, and you guys are pretty much probably the first person to hear this, so I'm saying it loud and proud. I am now officially self-employed as of today. I started working in my own private practice full time, and I'm no longer employed by anyone but myself. So I'm excited about that, and I'm a little nervous about that. Nevertheless, we got to take that leap at some time. And God has really been blessing me and preparing me for this moment. And so now I'm ready to take that leap. For anybody that's looking for any personalized one-to-one tutoring sessions, it's the sessions are so much better one-to-one because I can actively engage you guys. I can talk back to you guys, and I can actually see you. So if anyone is interested in any personalized one-to-one tutoring, you can always, inbox me or go to my webpage and send me an email and just reference that you would like one-to-one tutoring. I can send you some information and let you know how my tutoring services, how I operate with them and how I go about doing them, and then we can take it from there. But tonight was really good. That was fun, and my time is well spent. So until next time, guys, you have a good night, and I will talk to you soon. All right. Good night, and thank you again for your participation.